You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm sitting down with professional makeup artist and YouTuber. Growing up in Sydney, Australia, this week's guests struggle with self-confidence from a young age. Discovering makeup as a way to express herself and relieve her insecurities, she decided to turn her passion into her day job and went to college to study it further. Working on the Chanel counter, it wasn't long before she took to YouTube to share her looks, which ultimately changed everything. 7 years, 1.4 million subscribers, and a move to Ireland later, she's sharing the behind the scenes of her journey, the dark sides of the beauty industry, balancing life online with reality, and how she deals with hate comments. Here's what it's like to be Stephanie Lange. First of all, welcome Stephanie. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. How I like to kick off every episode, just to give people a bit of background about you, is to chat a bit about what it was like for you growing up in Sydney, I think you're from?
Yeah, Sydney.
So what was that experience like for you, or what can you remember about it?
So it was a pretty chilled lifestyle. Pretty similar to Ireland, actually, just warmer weather. But I kind of always felt like an outsider. Like I was always what I would probably consider to be like the ugly duckling, and I struggled a lot to fit in. But then as I got older, like kind of into my later teens and early 20s, I realized I didn't actually want to fit in at all, and you should just be yourself, as corny as it sounds. But no, I had a great childhood. I had my siblings, and the beach was close by, and it was a pretty good childhood all in all when I look back.
Yeah, I'm always so jealous. I love the outdoor lifestyle in Australia. I think it must be amazing to live so close to the beach and have the weather, as you said. But I suppose I'd be interested to know what your first experiences with makeup were like, or where that interest came from.
So I remember when I was a really, really young kid, maybe 4 or 5, I used to play with not my mum's makeup, because my mum never really wore a whole lot of makeup, but my mum's friends' makeup. And I had this makeup bag that one of my mum's good friends gave me with all her old makeup that she didn't use anymore. And I still have that makeup to this day. It's like almost
Oh,
30 years old now.
no way.
And yeah, I used to play with that. And then when I was, I'd say about 13 or 14, I got really bad acne. And I remember I just felt absolutely hideous, and I used to get made fun of at school. People would tell me I was ugly, and I was so self-conscious. But my mum didn't let me wear makeup because I was too young to be, putting a full face of makeup on. So what I would do, I had this foundation, and when I was walking to school, I had to walk through this bush track to get to school. I would stop in the bush track, pull out my little mirror, and put my makeup on before going to school to try and hide my skin. So that was kind of my first experiences with makeup. But I'm a really creative, artsy person as well. So I love just, making people feel beautiful. I love how you can accentuate people's best features with makeup and, maybe hide features that they're not so fond of. So it's kind of like art for me, but it's also a form of self-expression. And now I don't wear it as much anymore because I'm trying to learn to be just comfortable with what I look like, with a bare face. But I do still love the creativity of it, and I love doing makeup on other people.
Yeah, I suppose it's almost like painting a blank canvas as well when you do up someone's face.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then, I always love hearing stories about how people turned their passions when they were younger into their full-time 9 to 5 day job. So how did that transition come about for you? And I suppose, when did you know that you wanted to do makeup professionally?
So that was when I was in my early 20s. I'd been traveling around the world, and I moved back to Sydney. I went to music college for a bit because I thought I wanted to do music, and then I realised I probably wasn't good enough to do music for my career, but I was really good at makeup, and I was always doing my friends' makeup and always doing my own makeup, and it was just a hobby, and I enjoyed it. And then I was like, you know what, I reckon I can turn this into a career, because I never really liked working for other people. The 9 to 5 wasn't my kind of thing. So I went to a private makeup college then for a year just to learn the ins and outs, the hygiene aspects. Um, And I didn't really learn a whole lot there, to be honest. It wasn't the best experience, but I did get my certification, which is what I went there for, just to have the paper. And then I started working at Chanel, actually, in Sydney as a makeup artist on the counter. And that was great. I loved that. But whilst I was there, YouTube was becoming a thing, and I saw that other girls were doing makeup on YouTube, and I was like, this looks so fun. So I gave it a go, and it really resonated with people. And I'm like, what I like to do is really in-depth makeup tutorials, kind of sorting out people's makeup problems, kind of videos I would have liked to watch myself when I was first getting into makeup. So I started doing videos like that, and it kind of just took off from there. And then I said to myself, once I was earning the same amount from YouTube that I was earning from my full-time job on counter, then I would quit my job on counter and just put all my effort into YouTube. And then when that happened, I quit my job at Chanel and, started doing YouTube full-time. And that was probably about 6 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see how far you've come. Obviously, you've amassed millions of followers online. But can you take me back to, I suppose, those early days of YouTube and what the online beauty industry was like then? Because I feel like now, maybe, I don't know if saturated is the right word, but everyone wants to be a YouTuber. I know there's a lot of different niches, but there's a lot of people wanting to be beauty influencers and things like that. So what was it like when you first started out?
So when I first started out, people were already making a living from it. So like back in the old days, you couldn't make money really from YouTube at all. When I started, you could. Like AdSense was already a thing. So there was still a bit of competition there, I'd say, even back in the day. Like it was already, I think, kind of saturated. Now it's even more so.
Yeah.
But I think back in the day, it wasn't so like followers driven. It wasn't so, people weren't going into it in order to make money. Like people were going into it to share their passions but also make money at the same time. It wasn't going into YouTube purely to make money, which I think some people go into it now with that expectation. And it certainly wasn't as kind of dramatic back in the day. Like I know in the US especially, a lot of YouTubers are really, really dramatic. There's always drama happening.
Yeah.
Like you've got drama channels now, and those channels do really, really well because there's so much drama. But back in the day, there was none of that, none that I was aware of anyway. It was more about like sharing a passion, and people weren't focused on views. So I would do a makeup tutorial like with like knowing that not many people would watch it, and I was perfectly fine with that because I was just doing it because I loved it. And there was no real pressure back then, so there was no pressure to, you have to have 50,000 views per video. It was just you put out what you enjoyed. Now I feel like there's so much more pressure behind it, which kind of takes the fun out of it a little bit. But back in the day, it was so much more chilled.
Yeah, I feel like now people are definitely, or they've seen the amount of money, or I don't know, just what you can get out of it, that they go into it for that reason. And I think you can tell from people's content as well. But for you, do you remember, well, you probably remember, but how you grew initially, or was there a blow up moment for you, a certain video that just took off, or what was the turning point when you really thought, okay, this is something I can do every day, and get paid for it?
I think so. Doing actual makeup looks has never been a huge thing on my channel. I'm probably not I'm definitely not as creative as other makeup artists in that sense. But what really worked on my channel was the in-depth problem-solving makeup tutorials. So like how to do foundation if you have acne, or how to put eyeshadow on if you've got hooded eyes. Because back in the day, not many people were focusing on, helpful tutorials that are in-depth like that. And I could kind of see that there wasn't a whole lot of videos like that out there, and I was like, well, that's what I would want to be watching. And if I had acne or if I had hooded eyes and I didn't know how to work with them, this is the kind of video I'd be searching for. And I was like, I'll just make them then, because someone's got to make them. But people really enjoyed them, and they were sharing them with their friends and requesting more. So I just kept giving people what they wanted, and that's kind of how my channel grew then. And then I kind of, branched out to vlogs, and it's kind of just like you start off with one thing and you kind of explore that as much as you can. And then as natural progression goes, you kind of move on to other subjects, which is kind of what I'm doing now. But yeah, back in the day, I was really, really loving doing just the in-depth problem-solving makeup tutorials. And also my advice would be, like, make videos that you think other people would be searching for or wanting to watch. And if it's something that you yourself would want to watch, that's what you want to make videos on. So that's what I did back in the day.
Yeah, I think YouTube's such a cool space because there's so much scope to pretty much, film whatever you want. And as well, as you said, like people, if you're stuck with something in life, or I don't know, even building a wardrobe, everyone's like, just YouTube it, it'll be on there somewhere. Yeah. So that's so true what you're saying. And so then in the middle of all of this, in the middle of your growth online and you establishing yourself there, you also moved to Ireland, which I think is pretty interesting. So why did that come about, and how did you find the switch from I guess the Australian online industry to the Irish one, which I would say is a bit more of a smaller market, or it's less done here? How did you find that?
Yeah, so I actually lived in Ireland back in 2009. I was meant to be here for 3 days, and I ended up staying for I think it was almost 2 years.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then I moved back to Australia. I met my fiance there, and he's from Donegal. So then we moved back to Ireland because I always wanted to come back. So we did that. And I was really, really lucky because YouTube was my career, so I could kind of just pack up and leave. And I didn't have to worry about finding a job here or anything like that because I could just take my work with me. But it was pretty different in regards to the business aspect, because in Sydney there was a huge scene. So I had management there and they were great, and I had all my friends that did YouTube as well, so we would always meet up and we could chat about it. And I'd be going to events 2 or 3 times every week. There was always some a brand launching a product, so there was always something to do there. And it was super, super busy. And then when I moved here, you're completely right. The scene was a lot smaller, a lot quieter. And also I moved to Donegal, so I wasn't exactly in Dublin or anything like that where stuff was happening. So I had to find new management over here. I had to find new friends that were kind of in the industry, and because it's always nice to be able to speak to somebody that knows what it's like.
Yeah.
And I stopped going to events pretty much. I went to a few in Dublin, but it was just way too much effort for me to drive all the way from Donegal to Dublin just for 1 hour event or something, and then drive all the way back. So it definitely changed. And I felt a lot more laid back here as well. I feel like there's not as much pressure as there was in Sydney to kind of always be going to events and things like that. So in that aspect, I really liked it.
Did it ever make you question, whether you wanted to continue with YouTube and with Instagram and things like that, the lack of a scene here?
No, not really, because I'm a kind of content person. I am determined and I am driven, but I'm not the kind of person that always wants more. I'm pretty content with what I have. And in Ireland, in Donegal, I didn't have, all the events, and I didn't have the business aspect of life that I had in Sydney, but I have all my friends here that I met back in 2009 that became, lifelong friends. And so I actually really like the chilled out, laid back way of living here, which in Sydney, things were getting a bit too fast paced for me anyway, because I'm not that kind of person. So I definitely never considered, I have considered quitting YouTube and Instagram, but not for those reasons.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to hear your take on it, because I can imagine Sydney and Australia has a huge scene. So when I saw you move to Donegal, I was like, oh wow, I wonder how she found that move.
Yeah.
And so then I really like the videos that you do on your channel that kind of exposes the wrong word, but just tells the truth about the beauty industry. And because I think it's becoming such a problem these days with not even just young people, but also even people in their 20s, 30s. We're also glued to our phone, constantly looking at these unrealistic expectations of beauty. So I'd be interested to hear your take on, I suppose, the dark side of the online beauty industry, and why you decided to speak on that and to actually make videos that show people what's really going on behind the scenes.
So that's kind of, yeah, I feel like that's kind of where my passions lie at the moment, is just making people feel good about themselves as they actually are, and kind of, yeah, you're right, I suppose, like exposing what actually does happen behind the scenes, because, you know, I've seen it firsthand, so I can kind of see it from what happens behind the scenes, and also how it affects people that aren't in the industry, and what they think happens. Because, you know, I am in the industry, and yet I still find myself comparing myself to people I see on Instagram or YouTube, even though I know, like, I can see when things aren't real, or I can see when certain images have been altered, because I know what to look for. And yet, even though I know it's not real, I'm still comparing myself subconsciously. So I'm like, if that's affecting me that badly, imagine how it's affecting people that think that these images or these people are real, and that they really look like this in real life. Like, it makes people feel so down about themselves. And I get comments on my YouTube on a daily basis, and DMs on Instagram from girls and boys telling me that, you know, they feel so bad about themselves, or how can you, you know, get rid of your pores, or how can they lose weight, or just messages like that made me think, you know what, I need to start putting my focus into making content like this that will actually make people feel good about themselves as they currently are, because not one single one of us can actually fit into this beauty expectation that's been set, because it's not actually made for real people. And it's so easy to edit pictures online. Like, I used to do it back in the day, you know. I've always been kind of a scrawny human, but even I would edit my pictures to look like how I thought people wanted me to look, or I'd airbrush out my pores, or I'd make my nose smaller. And I didn't realize at the time how damaging that would be to people kind of looking at my images. And now I don't do any of that. Like, I just take a picture and I'll, you know, put a filter on it to make the lighting cooler or the color cooler, but that's it. Whereas I know a lot of other people are still editing their pictures, and then you see, you know, a picture of them in real life, and it's like, they look amazing in real life, so why did they have to, you know, change what they look like to fit in with this fake beauty expectation when they're already perfectly gorgeous in real life? Because it's just setting the bar so high that normal people can't actually live up to that. So yeah, that's why I really wanted to make videos kind of around that subject, to show people what actually does happen behind the scenes, because otherwise they don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And yeah, I really want people to stop comparing themselves and just realize that they are perfectly amazing as they naturally are. And maybe we can even change the beauty standard to celebrate people, like, no matter what size they are, what color their skin is, what their facial features are like, because everyone is amazing in their own way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're already, you know, carving a bit of a path by doing that on your channel, being, you know, such an influential makeup artist, but then on the flip side also saying, okay, yes, I do this, but, you know, this is what's really going on, and let me just show you what it's really like. I think it's really cool that you're doing that. And what do you think, in your opinion, needs to change, or like the one biggest thing that needs to change in the beauty industry, or just the online space, that will flip that and change the beauty standards, and, you know, just make everything a bit more real? Because I suppose there is that conflict of interest between people wanting to look at really aesthetic pictures and, you know, liking that look on their feed, but then also feeling bad about it at the same time. It's kind of like a conflicting thing.
Yeah, and it is a conflicting thing too, because, you know, people follow these, like, massive influencers because they're kind of like, people aspire to be like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't necessarily follow the girl that's living down the road from you because her feed is just normal, and, like, you already have that in your regular everyday life, so you don't need to follow that because there's nothing to aspire to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is tricky, but I think the best thing that could happen with social media to stop other people, you know, feeling crap about themselves, I mean, it would be amazing if all the editing apps and things like that were wiped from the face of the planet, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I think it is moving in the right direction. You've got like a lot of people on Instagram now and YouTube as well that are celebrating, you know, their cellulite, or they're celebrating their hairy legs, or they're refusing to airbrush their skin. And I think that then gives other people online kind of permission to do the same thing, and know that, you know, this is no longer something to be ashamed of, but we can actually start to celebrate what society deems as our flaws. And I think the more people that do that, the more it shows other people that that's actually okay, and you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to make yourself look perfect online either, and people are still going to, you know, respect you and still going to follow you and still going to like you. And another good thing, well, yeah, it is a good thing in a way. There's a lot of Instagram accounts now popping up that kind of show the reality behind Instagram influencers. So they'll put, you know, like a paparazzi picture, for example, next to the picture that the massive influencer posted, just so you can see the difference. Sometimes it can go a little bit far, and, you know, you don't know if they've edited either of the images or not, but I think some of them are really good just because they show, especially younger girls, like, that these people aren't actually, you know, unrealistically perfect, and they actually do have cellulite, and, you know, they do have rolls when they sit down, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think we are headed now in the right direction, and I think the more people that speak up on this and refuse to edit their images, the more that will spill over to other influencers as well, and then hopefully people will start to realise, oh geez, I look just the same as them, or like they look the same as me in real life, and then yeah, hopefully it won't be such a negative space.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right as well. You can definitely see the difference from even a few years ago, even probably last year to this year, of how people are becoming a bit more comfortable with telling the truth, I suppose. But so the other side of influencing that I think is interesting is how much of your life you put out there for everyone to watch. So did you ever struggle with that transparency element, or how did you navigate keeping some things to yourself and then showing the world the rest of it, or did it ever bother you?
So, to be completely honest, it never ever used to bother me in the past. Like, I'm an open book kind of person. Like, I don't have any secrets. Like, everyone that knows me in real life knows probably way too much about me, more than they even want to know. And so I've kind of always been the same online. Like, if I'm going through something, I've never tried to hide it. Like, I have absolutely no interest in trying to portray, like, you know, the perfect life or anything like that. Like, I've had a lot of struggles in the past. I've had a lot of kind of issues that I'm still working through to this day, and I don't care if people know about it, because I'm never trying to be that perfect person. So I've always been an open book. What's changed my mind now is when I had my son. So my baby, he's almost 15 months, and that's kind of changed my whole perspective on it. Now I feel like I should be a bit more private, kind of for his sake, because I don't know, is he going to turn around in 10 years' time and be like, Mum, like, why did you put me online? Like, can't believe you did that. So that's kind of why I stopped vlogging, because I was making vlogs on my channel and I enjoyed making them and just being honest and real with my followers. Now I feel I'm trying to decide whether I should continue doing that and just not show him as much, or just don't show him at all, or should I vlog or not vlog. So I'm kind of at a crossroads now, trying to figure out whether I want to keep my private life private, or whether I should continue being the open book that I've always been, but just keep my son a little bit more private. And also, it does change things when people know more about you and more about your personal life and the people in your personal life. It gives them more ammunition to use against you. So when I first started YouTube, I focused purely on the makeup. So I never really said anything about my personal life. I didn't show my fiance. I didn't show my family or my friends or anything like that. I was like strictly, you know, pure professional makeup artist. And that was fine, because then when I used to get hate comments, it was just about my makeup skills. It wasn't about me as a person. And then as I started to, you know, show a bit more of my real self online, and I started vlogging, or I would show my sister or my partner, or, you know, kind of what my ethics are in life, it gives people a lot more ammunition to use against you, people that don't like you. So now, instead of attacking what I look like or my makeup skills, they'll be like, oh, you are such a bad person, or, you know, that's a lot harder for me to deal with, because then it's like they're attacking you as a person, not just your makeup skills. So that's another reason I think maybe I should be a little bit more cautious or a little bit more private online. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out where I should go with that.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a hard one, because I suppose there's that debate as well. Can you ever be successful online if you don't go down, you know, the 100% authentic transparency route as well, and like let people in 100%, because will the connection be there if you don't do that? But then, as you said, you're so vulnerable to the nasty side of the internet, which I don't know how you handle that when you get so many people, you know, well, I don't know if you get so many people coming at you, but even just one comment, you know, I'm sure it can ruin your whole day. So
Oh, it does.
yeah, how do you deal with that when that happens?
So I used to, like, years ago when I first started, like I said, the hate comments were more just, you know, about what I looked like or about my makeup skills, so it didn't affect me at all. But now, I don't know, am I just becoming more sensitive in my old age, or are people getting meaner? But now it definitely affects me a lot more. Like, I could get 100 kind comments, and it'll be the one nasty one that sticks with me for the whole day, and I try so hard to get it out of my head, but it just keeps popping in, and then I find myself thinking, like, are they right? Am I actually like this? Like, am I doing something wrong? So it is difficult, and on YouTube's the worst for it. Like, I rarely get mean comments on Instagram, but YouTube, I think it just must be the anonymity. I can't even say that word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that people, you know, you don't know who it is that's commenting. People
Yeah.
just say the harshest stuff, and it definitely does stick with me a lot more now, and it was starting to really, really affect me, and I'd be in a great mood and then go on to, you know, reply to my YouTube comments, and I would just be hit with a barrage of, like, I don't even want to call it hate because it seems so trivial, but just a barrage of, like, really, really mean, nasty, personal things directed at me, and it would make me feel so down and really anxious. So I, for the most part, I stopped checking my YouTube comments. So now I only really check them if I've put a video up, and I'll stay online for a couple of hours after that just so I can respond to everyone if they've got questions or if they just want to talk to me. And then after that, that's kind of when the people that don't follow me, like they're not subscribers of mine on YouTube, will come across the video, and that's mostly when I get all the nasty comments. So I think for my own, like, mental health and peace of mind, I've had to stop looking at them as much because they were really starting to affect me, and especially when they're really personal about who you are as a person and stuff like that, it was starting to be too much for me to handle.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I think it's such a shame because the creative side of the internet, you know, it's such a tool for so many people, and people put their lives into creating entertainment for other people, that then you just get those few keyboard warriors that just can't, I don't know, keep their meanness to themselves. I know meanness isn't a word, but yeah, I always hate that part. I just think it's so unnecessary and so uncalled for. But despite all of that, you've done such amazing things with your career in such a short space of time. So what do you think the future holds for you, or what are your ultimate goals with this platform?
So what I really want to do, I want to focus more now on, like, making people feel good about themselves. So I feel like that's really important with all these, you know, perfect people you see online. I feel like it's really starting to affect people's mental health. So I really want to go down that direction. I've actually written a book on how to be self-confident in a social media world. And I think I'm going to probably release that as an ebook so that everyone can kind of get it. I'm just finishing off a few chapters, and then I think that'll be ready to launch. And I love writing. Like, even since I was a little kid, I've just written, you know, fiction books and things like that, so I'd love to go down that route. I'm also working on an ebook about cooking, because, you know, health and healthy lifestyle is, like, really important to me as well, because that obviously affects the way you look and you feel about yourself. So I'm going to get that launched this year, and I'm also working on a course on how to become self-confident, because, like I said at the start, I used to feel like I was a huge ugly duckling. Like, I used to have no self-confidence at all, and throughout the years I've managed to build myself up to being what I consider to be, like, I think I'm pretty self-confident now. Like, I accept what I suppose my flaws are, but I can be okay with them now, and so I want to give other people that power as well, like, to share what I've learned throughout the years. So I'm working on that course, and that's about it for this year. This year I actually really want to be content with what I have. I don't want to be pushing for more all the time, which I think in this industry you see everybody else being so successful that you're like, geez, maybe I should do this. Maybe I need to make 3 videos per week. I should be hitting these milestones or these targets, but I'm not that kind of person. I just want to sit back and chill out and relax and enjoy what I have and where I am and work on my veggie patch. And I do want to get, the book launched and the course launched and help people feel kind of empowered and good about themselves whilst I continue doing YouTube as well. So I'm going to try and get 1 to 2 videos out per week and get on a schedule with it because I'm terrible with that, and just kind of continue doing what I've been doing, I think.
Wow, well, it seems like, I know you said you want to have kind of a chill out year, but it does sound like you're going to be pretty busy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but with a lot of exciting stuff, and I just love how you dedicate so much of your time to making other people feel good, which, in the world it's kind of not dark times but just difficult times at the moment. It doesn't seem to be letting up, so it's nice to have those kind of things that you're giving back to people. So yeah, I'm excited to see all of this come to life soon. And then I have just one more question for you, and I'm gonna let you go. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through everything you've been through, which has been so much since then, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give that 10-year-old self moving forward?
Ooh, gee, that's a hard one. I think if I was to speak to my 10-year-old self, I'd tell her to embrace who she is and embrace her weirdness, because, like I said, I never really fit in with, my friends or my schoolmates or anything like that. I was always kind of the odd one out, and I wasn't really into what other people were into, and I was just a bit of a weirdo. I think looking back, I'd tell myself that's okay, and you're going to be a weirdo for the rest of your life, so you may as well embrace it now. And that's a good thing, because, you don't have to fit in with everybody else. I think I'd probably tell myself that, and that you can still have a great life, even if you are a bit different to other people, and that other people will love you just as you are. You don't have to change anything about yourself. I think that's what I'd tell myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, and if everyone was the same, the world would be such a boring place. I know that's such a cliche saying, but it's so true.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, and you've proved that so much with what you've done with your life. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything with me. It's been so interesting to chat. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for asking me. I'm so honoured.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear, and don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. To find out more about Stephanie and to watch her videos, visit the links in the show notes. I'll be back on Monday with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.